Mary Ellen, could we have the welcome notice of meeting?
A news release announcing the date, time, and place of the February 15th, 2018 Commission meeting was mailed February 13th, 2018 to appropriate media and other groups or individuals who requested notification. The announcement and agenda were posted at the Department of Disabilities and Special Needs Central Administrative Office, video conference locations, and on the website. The public has been notified that accommodations such as interpreters, mobility assistance, or other assistance will be provided to individuals with disabilities and special needs if requested in written.
Thank you. Invocation. Oh, Heavenly Father, we appreciate the opportunity to meet here today. What makes this country great is not that everyone thinks alike, but the diversity of its people. We are gathered here today to enhance the lives of people we serve. I don't ask that you bow your heads, but to look up at what you can accomplish by working together. I don't ask you to close your eyes, but to keep them wide open to the problems our community faces. With your talents and insights, we can lead this community to a better future. Amen.
All right.
Introduction of guests. May I start up at the front right, please? Could you stand and introduce yourself?
Michelle Shaker with Maxabilities.
Jate Hughes with Maxability.
And Alton BDSN.
Okay.
Deborah and Heather McPherson, Richland County.
Carolyn O'Connell, Greenville County Advocate.
Ralph Courtney, Triton Development Center, County Board of Disabilities.
Linda Lee, Witten Center Parents Club and Pat.
Good morning, Witten Center Parents Club, Kathleen Roberts and Pat.
Bob Jones, Newberry Disability Special Needs Board.
Thank you.
Thornwell Simmons, Protection and Advocacy.
Anna Borders, Aging with Flair.
And Connor Schisler, Aging with Flair.
Good morning, Mike Keith, Marion BHDD-OIDD.
Heather Waddell, Tri-Development Center.
Lydia Stevenson, Chester Lancaster Board.
Sarah Matherly of Lintry.
Hannah Cox, Human Resources.
Tom Ritter, Central Office.
Mike Moss, Calvin County Disabilities Board.
David Rothwell, USC Center for Disability Resources.
Sean Keith with Columbus Organization.
Gino Davenport, South Carolina Spinal Cord Injury Association. Suzanne Hunt, Project Foundation.
Fury Todd, Bright Start.
Beth Bundy, Bright Start.
Jerry Miser, County DSN.
Floyd Warren, Central DSN.
Judy Johnson, Bev Center.
Dexter Austin, DSN.
Good morning, Kim with WDDSN.
Joyce Davis, Brain Injury Association, South Carolina.
Marty Blanson, ARC, South Carolina.
And also, Mary, could you introduce your, oh, I'm sorry. Did I miss somebody back there? Oh, they did. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Liz and Jody DSN.
Dorothy Goodman, Community Options.
James Davis, Autism Division.
Oh, Mary Poole, Maxabilities, York.
And she didn't introduce
I'm
herself.
sorry.
Stand up, please.
My name is Jessica Poole.
Oh, I'm so glad to have you. Thank you all so much. I have the adoption of the agenda.
So move.
Have a
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Adopted. I would like to, we have two new commissioners. One of them unfortunately is out of the country because she wasn't sure she was going to get approved today. But I'd like to introduce our newest one, Christopher Neely from the 4th District. Would you like to say a few words?
Madam Chairman, thank you, commissioners, staff, and advocates, and providers, and our consumers. It's indeed an honor for me to serve on this commission. As was mentioned, I'm from Greenville, South Carolina. I'm the school leader of the Meyer Center for Special Children. We're a 64-year-old educational facility that inclusively provides therapy services for some of the most special children I think our state can serve. And so I look forward to working with all of you as we help our citizens and their needs. Thank you.
Thank you all. I also, since we were not here last month, I want to read the two resolutions for our outgoing commissioners. So, whereas Catherine O. Pursu of Greenville was appointed by Nikki R. Haley, Governor of South Carolina, in April 2016 to South Carolina Commission on Disability and Special Needs, and has served from April 2016 to January 2018, representing the 4th Congressional District. And whereas throughout her years of service on the South Carolina Commission of Disabilities and Special Needs, she had continually demonstrated exceptional leadership and dedication to the people with disabilities. And whereas her contributions as commissioners reflect her commitment and advocacy to increasing opportunities for people with disabilities in self-advocacy, education, employment, and community participation. And whereas her dedication efforts have contributed significantly to the improvement and expansion of services for people with intellectual and related disabilities, autism, traumatic brain injury, and spinal cord injury, into their increased opportunities in the community and the workplace. And now therefore it is be resolved that the South Carolina Commission on Disabilities and Special Needs and its department express our deepest appreciation to Catherine O. Fasu for her outstanding contributions and wish her continued success in all her future undertakings with respect and admiration for a valued colleague and outstanding public servant of South Carolina. We do hereby attest with our signatures, and we've all signed. And also, whereas William O. Danielson of Irma was appointed by Nikki R. Haley, Governor of South Carolina, in June 2014 to South Carolina Commission on Disabilities and Special Needs, representing the 2nd Congressional District, and was elected by his peers, serving as chairman from January 2015 to June 2017. And whereas throughout his years of service on the South Carolina Commission on Disabilities and Special Needs, he has continually demonstrated exceptional leadership and dedication to people with disabilities. And whereas his vast knowledge, expertise, and contribution to the South Carolina Department of Disabilities and Special Needs reflect his commitment and advocacy to increasing opportunities for people with disabilities in self-advocacy, education, employment, and community participation. And whereas his dedicated effort has contributed significantly to the improvement and expansion of services for people with intellectual and related disabilities, autism, traumatic brain injury, and spinal cord injury, and to their increased opportunity in the community and the workplace. And now therefore be it resolved that the South Carolina Commission on Disabilities and Special Needs and its department express our deepest appreciation to William O. Danielson for his outstanding contribution and wish him continued success in all future undertakings with respect and admiration for valued colleagues and outstanding public servant of South Carolina. We do hereby attest with our signatures. So we thank them both and wish them well. Appreciate it. So happy to have new ones too. Can I have approval of the minutes from December 14th?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Can I have some public input? Deborah McPherson, please.
Good morning. I want to welcome our new commissioners, Ms. Unum and Mr. Neely. I watched their Senate confirmation hearings and support their assessments and recommendations for needed change. Ms. Unum is correct that there is a problem of public mistrust of the agency. Mr. Neely gave several recommendations when asked to prioritize what actions were needed to restore the public's confidence. Mr. Neely is right that it all starts at the top. So to restore the public's confidence, a strong and honest director committed to serving consumers with disabilities and their families needs to be hired. He stated that the commission needs to work together. I agree with his position, but I do not believe that that means that commissioners will agree all the time. Discussion and questioning by commissioners is sorely needed. Third, a strategic plan must be developed and is shared with the public, with meaningful opportunities for public input. Mr. Neely is correct that the agency must, as former DHHS Director Keck directed, move from a band system to a fee-for-service model. Federal law mandates that providers be allowed to bill DHHS directly. I also agree with Mr. Neely that the Commission must hold providers accountable through internal checks and balances. Finally, I support his position that the waiting list need to be reduced. I would add that cuts made to existing waiver participants should be restored with written standards established to determine need. I look forward to working with the Commission on these recommendations. I attended the last House Legislative Oversight Committee meeting on February 1st, where Interim State Director Malley reported on the band system used by DDSN to pay its providers. I was encouraged by his remarks and suggested changes to the provider payment system. But his study failed to address the disconnect between the General Assembly's direction to provide supports needed by families whose loved ones live at home and the fact that the existing system provides financial rewards for institutionalized consumers. Instead of lifting the freeze on a provider with a terrible track record, families and consumers need to be provided the alternative of receiving equivalent supports at home. Whatever system is in place to pay DDSN providers, it should be one that is fair, easy to understand, transparent, and accountable. The system must also comply with the federal rule and the ADA by providing funding necessary for consumers to be fully integrated into their communities. There should never be a provider payment system used that only one or two people at DDSN can explain how the rates are determined. According to my discussions with CMS, until recently, that federal agency has not even been aware of and has never approved the band funding system that is in violation of federal law regarding reassignment of provider payments. Regardless of whether DDSN is an organized healthcare delivery system or not, providers can't be forced to reassign their Medicaid payments to DDSN as is currently being done. DDSN takes pride in bragging that 87% of consumers live at home. However, the band system allocates to those very individuals who live at home the lowest band assignment. This has forced families to choose between sending their children to DDSN-funded residential facilities at no cost to the family or quitting jobs and depleting retirement savings just to provide the care and supports their adult children with disabilities need. Commissioners also need to be aware of a recent trend of DDSN imposing cuts on in-home waiver services without providing the federally required notices, sending termination notices to providers on the same day defective notices are being sent to waiver participants. It is unconscionable that services would be reduced to adult individuals with intellectual and physical disabilities who are totally dependent on others for physical assistance, who are living with aging caregivers without prior notice and in violation of Medicaid regulations. What is equally troubling is that these reductions in services at the state level appear to be made by individuals without medical training and without the review and input of a physician. That is a recipe for disaster. Or attempts being made to justify these reductions in PCA services because of the IDRD waiver was changed, allowing PCA providers to bill services as respite. Commissioners need to know that there is a substantial difference in the rate paid to respite providers through Charles Lee Center and Jasper DSN Board as physical agents versus private QPLs. Reimbursement to private QPLs is lower, and the rate respite caregivers who work for QPLs is significantly lower. Why? In addition, family members who are providing care for their adult children can't be paid to provide respite care as they can be for providing PCA services. Many individuals and families have difficulty in finding respite providers given the low pay for these workers. Should they find a respite worker, DDSN has required the individual family to be the employee of record. The Commission should inquire as to whether DDSN is in violation of workers' compensation requirements for those workers. These are just some of the issues that the Commission has a duty to ask questions about regarding in-home family support services and the recent reductions in these critical services that appear to be happening that is reminiscent of those imposed in 2009. The courts have ruled that caps and waiver services can't be imposed on individuals who are at risk of institutionalization. Families and individuals with disabilities should not be forced to take legal action against the Commission and the agency to receive the in-home services needed to ensure the health and safety of themselves and their family member. The Commission has a duty to monitor and to make decisions about pending litigation. Families should not be forced into decade-long litigation. Hopefully, the addition of Consumer Unum's extensive background in disability-related law will change the course of this wasteful practice. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Beth Bunge. Welcome.
Good morning. Thank you for allowing me to speak. My name is Beth Bundy, and Terry Todd and I have owned Bright Start since 1999. Bright Start is a private provider of early intervention and case management, currently serving over 2,500 families. We're here today to voice our concern about a decision the Commission recently made involving QPLs and financial audits. Last year, the Commission voted to require all QPL providers to submit an independent financial audit. Whether one is a QPL or a local board, we all serve the same individuals and provide the same services, but that is where the similarities end. As a private provider, any and all services that we provide are reimbursed retrospectively. We don't receive funding in advance for positions or band payments, which includes financing for audits. This new mandate could cost private providers up to $10,000 a year. We as private business owners have a responsibility to our staff and the individuals that we serve to maintain a company that's not only reputable, but also in good financial standing. We have an accountant, bankers, financial advisors, and attorneys who consult with us to ensure we run a strong business that is financially secure. We abide by all the BHDD-OIDD directives and guidelines, including pre-employment trainings and salary requirements, and have done so with integrity for 19 years. Never should we be required to show where we spend the revenues, especially after delivery of services. If there's any question regarding our sustainability, we'll gladly furnish a letter from our bank stating we are financially stable. We're asking you to reconsider this requirement and vote to give private providers the respect that they have earned as business owners and to have a vote to reverse the financial audit requirement.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioners update. Anybody have any?
We have a video.
You have a video?
Yeah.
Oh, good, great.
2 minutes. This is a Tim Tebow event that on Friday night for Oconee and Pickens counties. So it's short, but it's really cute.
Good, great.
Some of these guys were mine when I was a
Do what?
I know half of them.
Any sound?
American Idol. She was still going.
There was much small talk. Born with a heart that felt heavy as stone. But I still love the sound of laughter. It's the sound of hope keeping us alive. Even when the rain pours down, even when the light seems like it's fading, even when your heart aches, feels like it's gonna break, that's when you sing out loud. That's when you sing out loud.
are there.
Big doings and pickings in Oconee.
Very well done.
Thanks for bringing that, I appreciate it. Anybody else have anything else?
Yeah.
No. Before we get the state director's report, you gotta get my report. I just want to tell you, I've been loving have Pat, he's putting up with me, and he's been very, very busy, and takes my call when I call, which is really great, which everybody always does, but I just want to thank him for all the work he's done, and glad to have him here, I appreciate it.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
Thank you.
My turn?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Go ahead.
The first thing, because we didn't meet last month, we were going to recognize the city of Georgetown winning the Silver Palmetto Award, which is awarded each year to the city that has the most outstanding contributions to people with disabilities during the previous year. And Gary, you attended. You want to give a few comments about? I saw the pictures. Having too good a time.
It was a very. I got to attend the luncheon for the municipal association. Met with folks from Georgetown. The mayor there and the city manager are very supportive of the community there, making sure that they're highly involved. I will say that one of the things that impressed me the most, of course, municipal association has a lot more money for this, but their lobbying machine is just that. It is a machine. You should see that when they go down to the legislature, they do it as a phalanx, and they just march from their meeting straight down there. And they have a very well organized system on that front. But it was a real pleasure to be there to make that award.
Okay, I appreciate you going. And there were 3 nominations. I tell you, all 3 of them, they read very similar, just so you can just see how integrated they are into the community, and how the community just wraps its arms around the boards. It reminds you why we're here. It was
and I will say, I was approached by at least a couple others of the, they actually want that award. I mean, there were a couple of other municipalities that were like, you're going to see us getting that reward in the next couple of years. So they're actually,
all right.
There are some folks out there that really want that recognition within their community. So obviously, let's keep those nominations rolling in.
All right, maybe the gold palmetto next year, right? Okay. So, I have a governor's proclamation. The month of February is Vulnerable Adult Awareness Month, and I want to read just a short snippet from the governor. Throughout the state, and encourage all South Carolinians to support the worth and dignity of all individuals and to work together to secure the right of all our residents to live free of abuse, neglect, and exploitation. Henry McMaster, Governor of South Carolina. And we'll put that on our webpage and make sure it gets distributed. On February 2nd, we met in front of the House Oversight Committee, and the topic was bans, and it's on YouTube, I guess, if you want to see it. But anyway, it was well received. I thought the House members understood bans. They understood the critical role it plays in our future, and maybe some of the reasons for some of the dissatisfaction in the system. And I really felt like I left that room with most people. I think everybody felt like we're moving in the right direction. And then just to add to that, this morning I contacted HHS on update as to during the planning stages of lining up a subject matter expert to start the stakeholders, and they have a proposed contract that they're looking at right now. And once they finalize that with the subject matter expert that they have, they will then roll out a timeline and start the stakeholders meeting and start down that road of looking at our system as well as the rates. So I think that ball has started to go downhill, and I think that's just a big movement toward bringing everybody back together. February 6th, we testified in front of the House Ways and Means Subcommittee on healthcare with our budget, and we asked for $39 million, which was about half of what they had available. So we're not going to get it all, I'll tell you right now. But they were very, very receptive to the the dollar increase for direct care. That just, it seems like they took over the hearing and they were talking and engaging, and we almost got them to $13, but it seemed very positive toward that. But we'll know, budget's tight this year, and there's a lot of other people down there trying to get their needs met, but I think they appreciate it and understood the criticality of keeping that workforce from being in a high turnover mode where it just affects everything we do. Just to cover up minor matters. We've taken a look at our environmental modification programs, and we kind of gave it a new process, and I appreciate the feedback we got from EDs and caseworkers out there. And we sent something out yesterday as to what we're doing and how we're doing it, and we're gonna speed that up. So that's in the mill, and actually they've been going for 2 weeks pretty hard. It was just getting them targeted on the problem. And Beth, I just want to make a comment to your comment. That was a recommendation from the Senate, and we are actively looking at that issue and collecting data on that, and we will ultimately present a recommendation to the Finance Committee and work it up. So one way or another, we'll present something. And the last area that we're just on the front end of looking at is just the residential high management housing. It's just a very limited availability. The turnover is slow, the need is high, and let alone the people on the critical waiting list that have 24-hour needs. That is just slowly feeling like we're going metal to metal, and we have to look at that to bring some capacity and some triage to that end of our service delivery system. So we're working on that, and we'll have some recommendations in the near future. Other than that, that's all I have.
Well, thank you very much. Gary, Lavelle, could you?
Oh, right. So coming from York County, my home county, for many years, the primary industry up there was the textile mills. And for the longest time, that sort of labor-intensive industry provided a lot of opportunities for our consumers to gain employment. But like most of that sort of industry over the last 15, 20 years, it's dried up. The mills have gone away. And so in the constant struggle to find viable employment for our consumers, Mary Poole with Max Abilities has always been at the forefront of trying anything and everything. And so I'm very happy to have her come and make a presentation today on what Max Abilities' latest attempt is to provide some additional employment for our consumers. So Mary, I'd ask you if you would come forward and make a presentation with regard to the new employment opportunity that you've prepared.
And I would like to introduce Shajante. He's been working with us on our marketing efforts with our new roastery. And Miss Jessica, I promised I would call her Jessica today. Jessica, and she's also been out there working with us, getting the word out and whetting folks' appetite by giving them a little coffee sample. So if you wouldn't mind, make sure our commission members, John, this way, the folks with the blue signs in front of their names, thank you. And so you guys don't have to like turn completely around. I brought low-tech. I believe in low-tech. There you go.
Pass those out for you.
Oh, that'd be lovely. Thank you. I said I had 3 kinds of tech today. I emailed the presentation, that's the high-tech version. Then I brought it on a thumb drive, that's the medium-tech version. And of course, I always bring the low-tech version just in case everything else fails, which what we're looking for is a way to find another funding stream for folks who don't have a funding stream. We've got lots of folks that knock on our door that would like to have a job coach or be part of our day program, and the one problem is if they don't have a waiver, there's an issue. And we also have this issue about learning to go to work from high school. And you know, anybody who has sat in a meeting with me knows that I believe that we start way, way, way too late. I believe it needs to start in preschool. I mean, I think it needs to start early. So I have a mom, like most people, I guess, and she lives in New York, and she's got the Facebook going. So she does the Facebook and she does the Google. And she saw this video about a coffee company in Maryland. And I'm gonna love to say this because it's Furnace Hills Coffee Company, and Mom said that because she sends me everything Down syndrome. And this is a story about a dad who has a Down syndrome daughter, a daughter with Down syndrome. She's a lovely girl, and she couldn't find any services for her. So this is the part I like saying. He says services in Maryland are horrible job services. And I always like kind of, because we always hear about South Carolina that we're not doing what we need to do, what all other states doing. Well, other states have parents that are just going out there trying to do what they can do. So he started roasting coffee in his garage. And now he has a storefront, and it's called Furnace Hills Coffee Company. And because my mom sent me the video on the Facebook, I reached out to him and started talking to him, and we've kind of struck up a friendship. And we started talking about how can we take this model where he was only at the time employing his daughter, and now he has since got a second employee. And he actually employs these two folks, but he's very small. I'm like, well, I guess I can start roasting in my, well, I don't have a basement, but I can start roasting outside of my house, and we can employ our kids, or we can take this idea and see what we can do to make it a little bit bigger, and to see how many people, we might not be able to employ them, but can we train them to move on from the roastery to something else? So we started looking at coffee, and we said, why coffee, why now? Well, we like coffee. So I'm not gonna sell asparagus. We like coffee, and there we go. And we really like good coffee. Now, personally, I didn't think there was a difference between the two until I tasted it. And there is. There is coffee you get at the grocery store, and then there's good coffee, which explains why people pay $5 a cup to go to Starbucks, which I still don't get. But, so we were kind of inspired by what Furnace Hills was doing. We think coffee is a good product, and most people, if they drink coffee, they're going to continue to drink coffee. But we felt that employing only 2 people just wasn't good enough. We had to figure out how to expand that to more folks. So we looked at the high schools, we started talking to folks, and we started thinking that maybe this doesn't need to be an end job, but this is a place where we can put a job coach and we can start teaching those soft skills. And then we plan on having a bank of computers where people start looking for jobs. So it would actually be like a lab, a place where people could actually start experimenting with their skills. We can see where they are and we can move them out. We want to create an opportunity that wasn't relying on Medicaid as our funding source. We want to rely on selling the coffee as our funding source. We also thought this would be a final rule compliant alternative. We could be less dependent on the economies. We can be less dependent on political whims. And we want to be more involved in the community. Because our first thought was to use our workshop, to convert the workshop. And they said no, because final rule came walking along and we said, that's not going to work. And then so we went out looking for a location. We're in the historic district, which makes renovation very difficult, by the way, just sets it aside. Roasting offers more job opportunities because the roasting itself, you can break down to smaller pieces and do smaller jobs for folks. And also computer. We need someone to do shipping and receiving. We need inventory control. We need label production. So we are looking at all the different pieces we can use to see what folks can do and where they would get the most, we would get the most bang for their job opportunity time. And then also we want to get families more involved. We don't want this to be isolated around just the individuals. It is time to pull these parents in. And it is time to give them the expectation of employment for their child. Because sometimes that's where the blockage is. So we are the proud owners of 4 fluid bed roasters. We do have those. And we have grinders. And we know how to roast. We went to roasting school. We went to Furnace Hills for a couple of days and learned how to do it. It's not difficult. And these particular type of roasters are very user-friendly. They don't get hot on the outside. So the only thing they have to handle is the handle where the hopper is. And then they lift a handle. Again, it's not all that high tech. So we have recipes. We bought recipes. And we are getting ready to do our first order of coffee beans. And we have to use very special scales because we don't want to be accused of having our thumb on a scale somewhere. So at this point, we've been granted approval by our board. Of course, we went to the board with all these ideas and they've worked with us along the way. We're working with School District 1, the York School District 1, because it's the closest to us. And we're going to start working with them to work on a work skills program to see if we can do some timeshare, bringing kids in their last year of school to start the transition process. We have purchased our roasting recipes. We're developing individual and family agreements, participation agreements, because things like transportation is an issue. And we've got to get some skin in the game from the families. We have a community location. We have built our website. We have the YorkCoffeeRoastery.com. We have a Facebook page, so if you like us. I'm learning all the lingo. I'm a social media person. And we continue to develop our marketing strategy. We're working with Furnace Hills. He's our consultant. We have an agreement with him to come help us set up the roasters, to start teaching our individuals how to do this. And we've given him task analysis for all the jobs, because that's something he's not used to doing. So it's becoming a very mutual relationship. We've also started a small consortium of tiny roasters, sometimes it's just one person and a couple of individuals, to see if we can get better prices on our beans, because the more beans you buy, the better price you get, of course. And then we've been selling coffee on a limited basis just to get people to taste it and to understand there's a difference in coffees. And we've got a good brand. Any questions so far? And our vision. What is our vision for this project? Where do we want to go with this? Again, we want to develop a non-Medicaid funding stream to support 21-year-olds as they exit high school. We don't want anybody graduating to their couch. We want to help them have marketable skills. That is customer service, showing up to work on time, learning how to punch that clock, learning how to take criticism, which is tough for our folks. Well, it's probably tough for every folk. And to build them a resume that we can submit because they have time on the job. We pay minimum wage to the roasters. I don't know if you know, but York County no longer has a minimum wage certificate. We declined to renew our certificate because we've always been paying minimum wage to our workers. We are developing an online store. I just got my certification of a secure website. I really don't know what that is, but I got it. We want to sell in retail establishments, and we want to have a fundraising coffee brand for organizations who are tired of selling pizza kits and chocolate bars. And to do that, we have to work with Clemson to get our products tested so we can get our labels. We can sell retail without a label on it, but we can't sell wholesale without a label on it. So the idea is to say, Knights of Columbus, if you're tired of selling or having Tootsie Rolls out in the Walmart parking lot, how about you buy a pound of coffee for $8, you turn around and you sell it for $14. And we make you a bag with your label on it, as long as we can put our mission statement on the back. We want to develop a kiosk system and sell brewed coffee at community events, maybe downtown locations. And my dream is to get it on a college campus like Winthrop, because they drink a lot of coffee. And we want a location for something called Coffee Talk. And that is to start bringing in families of children of a young age to show them in a location where people are actually doing a job that they can have dreams and aspirations with their children too. And also the retail space that we're looking at the Miracle Park. You talk about wanting to put a municipality up for nomination. I'm saving it till we have something built, but York is working on a Miracle Park. Rock Hill likes to think of themselves as a kind of like a sports capital of the upstate. I mean, we got a velodrome. How many people have that? And we have huge softball fields and soccer fields. And we have a BMX, we just had an international BMX race there. So we kind of said city, county, you've got all this stuff for all these typical athletes, you don't have anything for somebody with a disability to be safer. So they decided they wanted to build a miracle field, and but they said, well, it's got to be bigger. So we want a miracle park. And it's a partnership between the city of Rock Hill, who has put an agreement with the foundation for an 8-acre park. Winthrop Park is becoming Miracle Park.
Wonderful.
And Winthrop University has land deeded 7 adjoining acres. So we are right in there with their baseball field, with their softball fields. All the athletic things that Winthrop has will now have a Miracle Park sitting right there. And a 100 by 200 foot, I think it's the size of 2 football fields, inclusive playground. So that's what they're working on. And this is a partnership between them and Max Abilities. We're a at the table partner with them. So this is just one of those nice private public partnerships that Rock Hill's kind of famous for, actually. So the one thing is up there, that little orange space way in the corner, that is going to be retail space. They're talking maybe coffee shop. We're thinking maybe some sports equipment that is adaptive for the children to purchase. And then we also have an agreement that says, not without us. This can be here, but it's going to be a job training site. We're going to do the park maintenance with you. We're going to be doing the selling. If Max Abilities is a partner, it's got to be a venture where it ends up in a vocational idea. And one of the reasons I say this is because when you have a child with a disability and you can't think of anything that they might do, and you're sitting there going, woe is me, to walk into a store and see the sales clerk be someone with a disability when you're buying a baseball glove for your child, very well get the expectation of employment, the expectation of a future, the expectation of quality is what we're looking for. So it's also about optics. But the park would be open to everybody. And it would be intergenerational because we're looking at equipment and trails for folks that they can walk on that'd be safer. If you fall, you might necessarily break a hip, which is something I think about these days. So the whole idea of fulfilling the promise, and the 1 cup at a time is just a coffee reference. But we promise people that we will help them improve quality of life. That's something that we try to do. So we want to fulfill it. And it doesn't matter what your funding source is to us. So this is what is on the back of the bags, this little statement at the end, that who we are, what we're trying to do, what we've always done, that this little coffee endeavor is just the newest mission in our cadre of missions, and that we're trying to give work opportunities and training opportunities. And so to make the mission a reality, we had to figure out what the product was going to be. Look, if I could make widgets and we could do that, it was whatever we could find. You know, and this is what we found. So this is what we're going with. And public support by buying it, which of course I did bring order forms. And to us, it becomes a product, a promise that we can fulfill, because we want it to be sustainable. We don't want to ever look a family in the face and say, we don't have a job coach for you because you don't have Medicaid. Or we don't have a job coach for you because you don't have a waiver slot. We want to say that. And then the other thing is we want to bring in the voc rehab people and show them how it can be done. Because they need a little training in this too. I mean, they're being told you have to serve our people, but I really don't think they know how. And so we meet with them on a quarterly basis, but now we're going to meet with them at a quarterly basis over there. So they can see this is how they do it. They can buy their coffee now. Anybody have any questions about anything? But that's really that's what the roastery is about. So we're roasting coffee. We will sell brewed coffee because the teachers in the county want me to do that. But I'm not giving away free Wi-Fi, so they'll sit there and loiter, because the thing is about get in, get out. We're selling coffee here. We've got lots of beans sitting on the ground. We're trying to sell the bags of coffee.
Thank you.
We'll have 12 different brands.
I say thank you very much.
Oh, you're
and I
welcome.
just wanted to say I gave 15 of my friends coffee this year from York County, and
Thank you for that.
somebody asked me for my only bag I had at my house, so they took that one too.
Well, we have.
Thank you very much. It's great.
Just ask one thing. Who's the first person wearing blue? Raise their hand. Okay, over here.
Thank you.
Brenda, we're going to give away a couple of cups of coffee.
Okay.
All right. Anybody else wearing green?
Susan, you next.
You guys know I told that you were getting the coffee garbage.
Stop chopping.
I know people who Mary, thank you very much.
Our colors are moving.
Mary, I want to say I'm impressed.
Oh.
Thank you.
Well, that is the hard show to follow up on and come next after. It was a very enjoyable presentation, I think, for everybody. So thanks again for that. In tab 3, you have your waiting list reports. And I'm certainly glad to answer any questions about those. I'd just like to share a couple anecdotes. The climate is very good right now, working with DHHS to do some further streamlining of waiver enrollment processes, because of course we want to increase the speed that people are being enrolled to remove more people from waiting lists. So we're looking at things that will increase some of the communication between the DHHS Medicaid workers and our case managers, some of the preventative work, working the waiting list to make sure that people are queued up with Medicaid eligibility, which eventually will be required for them to be enrolled in the waiver. Details like that to really kind of shortcut some of the timelines that we have now. So we continue to work through that. You know, we still have 2,000 people that are pending enrollment, and we know that somewhere between 25 and 40% of those people will actually end up enrolled in a waiver because of all the processes that they go through. We're working with case managers to not keep people pending so long. Some of those cases that are pending have been for an extended period of time. So all those efforts continue to go on, but I'd say in the last month or so, we have even a strengthened effort, as I said, a good climate with DHHS to make some changes. So I'll just add that for the report. Are there any questions? Yes,
The critical needs, respite care needs, you're talking about 24-hour places. Is Lutheran Family Services, because I know money was awarded last year for that, for respite care, are they able to help with any of those critical needs people?
That's a great, that's on our thinking list, but we've not gotten that far to how we would merge the two. They have like 50% capacity, but it's something to consider for sure.
They have a 50% capacity?
Capacity. They've in the first year of operations, they're at a 50%, I guess, bed rate where people use it, and that means half the time it's not used, which is.
Although we were really expecting much lower utilization, so I think that what that reflects is that it truly was a need, and particularly when you consider that it's just a single location here in Columbia, you know, that kind of, we thought that would discourage some families from the outside parts of the state from using it, but they, you know, that really it's such a need that we've had families that will drive in just to access that respite.
So you have planned respite, and then you have critical respite that you're exploring with them, because they're at a 50% capacity. And how much did we fund them?
We funded them 2 different rates based upon whether or not they're going to be actually delivering a service or not delivering a service.
But it was not an emergency.
It was not emergency. It was planned respite. It was not emergency respite.
Okay, so I just want to bring back up a point about the critical needs. At some point, we looked at all these vacancies throughout the state, and money being paid back by providers because of their vacancies in like a CTH. If it's over 30 days vacant, then money gets paid back and all that. And you know, there needs to be some exploration of using those beds for some of these critical needs, because you've got all these vacancies and then you've got all these critical needs.
Yep.
If there's some way to match those, even if you had to supplement staffing for some behavior thing.
Everything's on the table. I can just tell you what David's doing now is we're trying to just get better insight to the whole dynamics of the vacant beds, the critical list, and how people flow in and out based on their needs. And once we, hopefully in a week or so, we'll have a better understanding of that. I mean, we can generalize what we're saying, but generally speaking, those beds are available. They are, there's probably 65 CTH2s and 25 SLP1s or 2s available. And it basically serves in the board system that serves consumers, but not all the high needs consumers, they can't serve the high needs consumers in the boards. And so the high needs consumers are looking for vacant beds, and the vacant beds are few and far between on the providers that will take them. I think the regional centers have probably expanded their capacity to an unhealthy level to meet immediate needs. And now we're going into correct care and we're filling it up. So we're already using all our surge capacity. And so we just got to get back to capacity residential beds so that the things that we use for the short-term surges will be available when we need them. And so the answer to your question is every bed is on the table, and we do have those beds that are vacant. And I think we have to give consideration as to how it all works and have enough capacity to serve the entire critical list as opposed to maybe just the ones with lower acuity. But we're looking at all those issues, and we're hoping to have the math run out here in a week or so that we can really see what is that tipping point that we can have a reasonable turnover on the list and place people in a reasonable amount of time.
So what I heard you say with Lutheran is they get two different rates based on whether they're actually serving somebody or not.
Correct.
So you're paying them to maintain vacant beds.
Correct.
And I mean, I don't know if that's such a great model, but could that be something that you could do in the counties with vacant beds?
Pay providers to maintain, well, we do pay providers to maintain vacant beds for 30 days.
Right. So you're paying Lutheran ongoing.
We did because, again, it's a little bit different. You know, when you got a residential service, that's something that's going to be a longer term. So you expect somebody to stay there. Respite, that's going to be short term. And again, you know, I think our initial expectations were that the utilization would not be quite as high as it was. So they have to maintain staff that are available to respond to the respite. And so that's where we basically set a reimbursement floor for them.
Yeah, well, providers have to maintain staff to take care of the other three in a CTH also.
That's true, absolutely.
So, I mean, you know, let's get equitable here on the reimbursement rate. That's all I have on that.
Anything else on the waiting list? All right, Susan, you want to continue with quarterly?
I'm gonna grab the ball right here.
Okay, go ahead.
We're into a little tag teaming, I think.
All right, sounds good.
All the hard questions will go to Susan and me. The reason I asked to take Susan's spot was because of really what the new commissioners during your presentation to the Senate confirmation process. You said all the right things. I appreciate the way you said them. And the one thing that resonated with me was we have to address the public's trust factor with DDSN, and certainly abuse and neglect really is at the core of trust, and we got to get that right. And as I told you in December, we're looking at that program from top to bottom. This is our first quarterly report, and so what I want to do is I don't want to come at it with a kind of a data dump and we talk about the outliers. What I want to do is come at it from a systems perspective so that it may take a few extra minutes, but I think if you don't understand the systems that underpin how we collect data to see the risk mitigation that's going on before you get to the number, it's not hard, I think it's hard to have the proper context to interpret the number. So I just want to go one by one and zip right through them. Critical incidents. I cannot find one ED, no matter how many years of experience, that was never worked in a world where there wasn't a critical incident. And I look back and what's the reason, why do we track that? And the history of critical incidents is when you have residential providers that become isolated, you start having bad habits, and that increases the risk of abuse and neglect. So the whole premise of critical instances, that's increased in transparency in the providers. Because if you have transparency, guess what? You're more likely to fix it. And if a regulator sees it, you're even more likely to fix it. So when you look at our system and providers send an initial report and meeting with a group of EDs, I mean, the primary consumer of critical incidents is not DDSN, it's the providers. And when you listen to them talk about when you have 50 residential housing in a 24/7 operation, and you, as an ED, you really don't know what's going on out there. You have to rely on it. All of a sudden, you have a data stream that gives you insight as to what's going on. And I was really impressed talking to them as to how rigorous they look at that data. And you may have the same piece of data, the same dot from two different houses, but they know their people, they know their staffing, they know what to address and what not to address. So when we look at critical incidents, it's not all collecting data and we wait till it aggregates in year end, we look at it. It is a tool that providers value. Now, when providers have to send it to us, they're not as happy about that, but they understand. And what I didn't know until recently is we have a full-time person with 20 years of experience in critical incidents that looks at every critical incident that comes to DDSN. Last year, we had 1,800 critical incidents that came to us. We had a person who has 17 years provider experience, 3 years at DDSN. She lays her eyes on every critical incident report, looks at it for thorough and completeness, as well as if you don't properly explain what happened, how do you know what you're going to do? And then when she gets the follow-up report, she looks at it for completeness, reasonableness of what they're going to do, as well as some of the issues you have to take real-time action. If you have a suicide allegation, that report better reflect what you did to address those issues in the immediacy, let alone long-term preventive techniques. So we look at this collection of data, and I guess I'm guilty of it. I thought we passively collected this data and looked at it once a year. We're actively working the data every day with providers. This person also, we don't, again, measurements, we need to be better at measurements. This same person who has vision on all these dots, 365 days a year, that's where you see the patterns. When you see the patterns, you do the follow-up. I would not capture that accurately, but it's another line of defense looking at using the critical incident data to mitigate risk. And then lastly, we get it. And you see that. What does that tell you? It doesn't tell me much. And what I want to do is zoom ahead for a second. The risk of never getting back. And I want you to just look at that critical incident reporting line where it says fiscal year 15, 16, and 17. Fiscal year 15 had 1,385. Okay, in 2 years, we went up 500. 500. Okay, so what happens? Okay, that's what we do. That's the big data is for the big what's going on out there. And when I talk to Ann, I mean, again, how do you back into that? I can grind that data all day long. I may come up with something, but an educated inference is multiple things going on. And you could say we changed some administrative requirements, we changed the way Alliant worked, but I can tell you, when it goes up, it's confirming to me, and I've confirmed with a lot of people in this room, that in the DDS and residential population, the consumer behavior needs have been increasing over the last 3 or 4 years. And so when I look at the data, it gives me an inference, but what really makes the conclusion is what I see every day, what I hear every day, how we handle behavioral supports, how we execute that whole mission of providing habilitation to consumers. I mean, we are relying on direct care workers with a 37% turnover in providers, 50% at regional centers, getting paid $11 an hour, high school degree optional, to execute the skills of improving behavior of consumers. It's a very daunting responsibility we put on these people. And so when you see the data creeping up and you see the factors of production, I think that's the question. We don't need more auditing to tell us what's going on. We need to start looking at the solution stages of how do we support consumers with higher behavioral needs in a residential setting from a system standpoint. I ain't got an answer for you today, but I tell you, when I look at that data, that's what it tells me. So I'll go back to the squiggly lines and we can piece it together, we can torture the data, but at the end of the day, going up 500 is what tells me something. But I would caution us, when we look at data here, and this gets back to the whole public trust, it is a fair statement. When it goes up 500, something's going on, we got some explaining to do. But when you look at individual data, and splice it among 60 providers, and say your critical incidents have gone up 22% last year, that is an unfair inference of a performance issue, particularly from last year going backwards, because about 40% of all the critical indicators came from 2 medical categories, 3-day admission and major medical. And they're certainly major events, but as far as them being a routine event, a predictable event, some other information, it's hard to say when you have a fragile population that goes to the hospital, and that's a negative inference toward a provider. So there's so many convoluting variables in there. We're going to be very careful in using individual critical incidents per provider as an indicator of success. Now, if you look over 5 years, maybe it might mean something, but I think the reporting that we've had in the media has been very annually driven, dot and time, creating an inference, which quite frankly, a lot of review will show the inference is incorrect. So my question is, when you look at data, we've got to be careful how to use it. And when I look at critical incident data, at the macro level, it will tell us something, but I think what I want you to walk away with appreciation is at the granular sand level, we look at everyone, all 1,800, put them through a filter and due diligence. So it has a risk, both a deterrent as well as a preventative capability. Death reporting. Look at that from fiscal year 16 to 17, 18. We went from 63 to 78, 80. What do I do when I see that? Go to Ann, I say, Ann, what's going on there? What is going on there? And we've been through the data, we look at the data. You know, how do we explain that increase? You know, the population has increased a little bit. If you look at the rate per 100, it's within a couple of tenths of % of each other, but you still have to ask yourself the question. And quite frankly, I can't tell you the answer, but rather than debate the number, I ask you to go back to the beginning. And the beginning is, when there's a death in the community, they fill out a death report. It goes through, every death report goes through our person with 20 years experience of critical incident, death, and abuse and neglect experience. She makes sure the data is correct, thorough, and complete. It is then, we have an internal doctor who looks at every death case, provides us a report, a risk report. And over the last 3 years, we've had one case where there was a nurse that had a potential of administering some sort of therapy before the person died that may have contributed to that death. So 1 out of about 300 cases do we have an issue with the deduction that 299 were natural deaths. We then take that same death report and give it to the vulnerable fatality review.
Vulnerable adult fatality review committee.
What she said. They do the same thing. They do the same thing. They look at all the precursors, they look at all the antecedents, they look at the event, and they make a determination of basically cause of death. And I've been trying to get data for them for 6 weeks, and they're very sensitive to providing, I'll get it from them sooner or later. But the inference is, over the last 5 years, we've had 500 cases that go across the street, and we've had 4 tied to abuse and neglect. Okay, 4 is too many. But I would also say, when you are looking at deaths in a provider, you have to think about what each death has been scrutinized in a redundant way before it gets to the end of the year and we look at a report. That still bothers me, and we're still going to twirl around with that. What gives me confidence is every death has been reviewed twice by subject matter experts and determined, with few exceptions, to be natural causes. So when you look at deaths, again, it's something we have to track, we have to explain. I don't think we can really stop looking at that until we maybe exhaust all possibilities. But at the end of the day, when somebody says, hey, deaths are up 10% in a provider, I would challenge them. That by itself is not inference performance. It's a reason for inquiry. Community settings, there's a lot of data there. I know exactly how Eva thinks is go, go, go. I've already used too much. Abuse and neglect. These are what I call, sometimes you get a chart that really tells the picture, and this is going to be abuse and neglect in the community. And what it shows, all the same chart, you have allegations, which are the blue bars. Then you've got the green pattern is, they are administrative findings that the ombudsman finds, and they fall into a couple of categories. What are the categories?
So we have dignity and respect, inadequate personal care, and then we have accidental injuries or injuries of unknown origin.
Give me some examples.
So an injury of unknown origin may be bumps and bruises, minor scratches that occur just throughout the day. I mean, I know I have bruises that I don't know how I get. Sometimes during a transfer, a person has an accidental injury. There may be a fall that results in an injury. We have a lot of people within our services that have osteoporosis or osteopenia, which may result in fractures or other injuries to that person. For dignity and respect, we have anything from failure to honor choices to staff who speak very abruptly to the people they support. There may be cursing.
Cursing is a big one.
That's a big one. Unauthorized behavior management instead of behavior supports may fall into that category. For the inadequate personal care, we have a lot of issues around diets and food texture, full living schedules not being followed correctly, or medical treatments that don't occur as they were prescribed.
They are positive findings, or they're called standard of care, administrative findings, personnel related, performance related. It is not criminal in nature, it is more performance in nature. And the third category, which you really can't see unless you look at your chart, at the very bottom, we listed all the arrests over the last 5 years. And actually, we had an arrest last night, which, how does that affect our numbers?
It's not reflected there.
Okay.
The charts were done ahead before that happened.
That's annualized as of December, we had one, so it's probably still 12-ish. And what I want to bring your eye to is, when you look at the allegations, they have been going up since 14. Not dissimilar to critical incidents. There's an upward trend. When you look at the actual outcomes, when I look there in my judgment, what I see is that straight line, I see about as much over as under, which is indicative to me of a pretty stable trend line. And when I look at arrests, over the last 7 years, I looked in the last 7 years, we varied between 4 and actually at a 0, but 0 to 10 every year. That's how many people get arrested in the system, and we average 7. And I want to talk about those 7 because I think there's an issue in those 7. And the first thing I'm going to say is, as a system, we're asking ourselves, is 7 good or bad? Well, it should be 0. But what do those 7 look like? And those 7 look like about one horrific event that you would see in a movie, whether it's sexual assault, whether it's the things that keep people up at night. Then we'll have 1 or 2 stealing funds or nurses taking money. But we have between 60 and 65%, just my ballparking these cases, are direct care workers with some level of engagement with a consumer behavior that ends up with them striking the consumer. And I guess I've been probing the system as to, is that normal? How is it high? Is it low? People they don't have a good answer for that. Now, what we try to do is go to other states and see what their benchmarks are, but other states are very closed with sharing abuse and neglect data, very closed. But regardless of whether we think high or low, when I look at my arrest data, it says to me, if I got 60 or 65% with the same pattern, maybe I can do something about it. But when I look at our policies, we have our abuse and neglect policy when it comes to use of hands-on is basically, we have no policy. We say basically providers can go find a qualified provider to bring in training, and whatever that training is your policy. One of the providers, Mary, if you're here, do you have specific policies, or do you just defer all the policies to your training person when it comes to use of?
It's in their behavior plan as well. If there's a restraint, it's used towards whatever teachers. Yes, you use the training that you get.
for someone that doesn't have a behavioral plan.
No, we use the guidelines.
The guidelines from the training. So my point is, we delegated training to providers, providers pick different training, and I would assert that somewhere in here, there's a role for looking at this issue from a systematic approach to training with emphasis on don't strike the consumer. And I'll leave you with one thought, and I'm gonna get out of your way here, is the example we had last night, I won't use any names, but it just typifies what I see the issue is. And it may be tied to increasing behavioral conditions in providers. It may be tied there to a degree. The direct care worker comes to work, walks into a bedroom, punches the victim consumer in the chest. No injuries. Victim consumer tells another staff member, they report it. The guy gets fired and quits the same day. 5 months later, he's arrested for punching a consumer. But I guess what I'm bringing your eye to, it's the reason the person did it was they had a squabble the prior day. So if we have employees that have a squabble, get angry, then they come back 24 hours later and walk in and punch a consumer. It begs the question, there's a training issue in there somewhere, or there's a capability of the people we hire issue in there. But it's not, there's something going on. If we really want to get it down, it goes back to some of the weaknesses in the system that we see. 70% of the providers feel like they don't have enough direct care in the residential setting. We got the turnover rate. And we really, just from an outsider looking at what is expected of a direct care worker, it's the expectations for the direct care worker that we select and pay, I think is just very, very daunting. So when we wonder why maybe they don't have the skill set to really address some of the behaviors, I think we've got to ask ourselves that maybe there's something that we need to do to enhance that skill set or enhance the training. $1 is a, I don't know if it's a perfect solution, but raising the rates is all in that direction. So when I look at all this data, it does tell me something. No one piece of data drives me, but it just tells me that we have to look at behaviors and we have to look at the training of the direct support when it comes to when they put hands on people. We just got to get, I mean, really, you just can't, for the person to come in and punch them like that, they have to be completely vacant as to the consequence of that. So it's a training issue. So I think there are things we can do, but I'll leave you on a positive note. Not that this is negative, this is just facts. But we met with the providers yesterday and some quality experts from in the system, and we're working on the A&E program. And I asked them, among an hour and a half, I asked them 2 questions. I said, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being good, 1 being bad, how do you think the system is? We got ranges from 6 to 9. It was somewhere in the 7 or 8-ish range. Then the question was, well, how do you think the public perceives us? And it was a rock solid 3. And so there is damage to the public trust when it comes to abuse and neglect. And I think our direction is to shut up and fix our stuff. But at the same time, I think we have to be better at communicating the results in the right context so people understand what they mean and what they don't mean, and at the same time, an appreciation for the environment of which some direct care workers work in. And so there's no simple solution, but I do believe if the public thinks we're 3, we got to keep on swinging until we get it to where we match what we think we are. So that's my long-winded thing, but I wanted to give you the underlying risk assessment, so we're not just looking at numbers. Any questions?
Go ahead.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, this is a lot of reports, of course, as you pointed out, as you went through all the charts. And one of the ones that you pointed out where critical incidents had gone up by 500.
Yes.
From year 14, 15, and 16, and then we abruptly stopped measuring the same way in 17. I wonder if now is the time for us not to be collecting that data because it was escalating so much, and now we don't have any trend data.
That's a great point. And what through my little brain when I was looking at that is, it would be worth our time to go back to the old data
I agree with
and
you.
pull out the medical data
Yeah.
so that we have an apples to apples comparison.
Right.
Because when we see that, we gotta have a better understanding.
We
so
don't
we
know
start
where
over.
we are.
Yes.
We don't know if we're worse or better
Yeah,
or stay
I-
the same, and it was at an alarming rate of
Yeah,
increase.
yeah.
The other thing is, on the next to the last page, in trying to look at these reports, where it says critical incident reporting, it's death reporting, then it's critical incident reporting. And then it's got the percentage divided out, medical events, behavior incidents, and operations related. You with me on that?
I think I'm picturing it.
Okay, look at December, and there were 5 medical events. This is under critical incident reporting and community-based residential program.
Got it.
And day services, and then other areas, and there's a number 5 in December for medical events, and a 1% beside it. What is 5 supposed to be 1% of?
The total number of critical incidents in that setting.
In those settings?
So that would be residential and day services.
So 5 is supposed to be 1% of 58? Because it's not. And 39's not 67%. I mean, not 75% of 58 either, it's 67. Because so when you go back and look at these percentages and these numbers, if they're supposed to be a percent of the total in that column, they're not. So I wonder where that came from, but then the last thing, I just need to check that, because when we're looking at these, we need to, if you're gonna put it in here, let's put it in here correctly. And then, behavior incidents from July to December were 49% of critical incidents. If almost half of them, this is from July to December, and it ended up being 242 of the 582. Okay, so that's almost half is behavior incidents. It's less than that in regional centers, but it's about half in community residential, which I wanted to ask you if there was any, when you're presenting the budget this year, is there any interest in that psychiatric help?
Yes.
Amongst the legislators?
Actually, when we met with the representative, that was his second ranked request. It resonated with him as to the need for the system. I think after the dollar, I think that's the next one likely to be funded.
Well, that's encouraging.
It is.
Yeah.
I think we have to forge ahead with whatever we have.
Yeah.
Because I do believe we are getting metal to metal on that area of the spectrum.
And the resources just aren't in the community. The psychiatrists aren't in the community. The mental health professionals aren't in the community.
Especially on a real-time basis.
Yeah,
Yes.
so if we could, go back to, I had suggested last year that we do like hire because telepsych is a big deal, and a psychiatrist with 4 nurse practitioners in each region that can operate somewhat through telepsych and can respond on site. There's just nothing there. There just doesn't seem to be enough resources for all the behaviors that we're seeing.
I couldn't agree more, and I think from a fairness to the provider's perspective, in that we really only have one rate, 1 or 2 rates, but mainly it's 8 plans.
Yeah.
If we want to encourage them to take the higher acuity needs people,
Give them the resources.
if they feel like there's a capacity for help, or just not be stuck with the problem by themselves.
Right.
So I do believe that's a factor that we have to look at.
I think that would be a critical factor in lowering this group.
I think the data.
Yeah. Thank you so much for reporting on that. Susan?
Back again in tab 5, and I'll be very brief. Just wanted to highlight what's in your binder was communicated to providers January 31st, and talk through those dates a little bit. So first of all, this data that's attached, in addition to other data points that are more provider level data, will be used as just pieces of data that collectively will be added to other pieces of data that providers will consider to develop their compliance. We have compliance deadlines for the home and community-based settings final rule requirements. Back in 2014, those regulations were distributed, so the system has been gearing up, transitioning, revising things to be more compliant with those guidelines. And as DHHS and our state set the timelines with the federal guidance, non-residential settings will have to be compliant in March of 2022, residential by December, at the end of December in 18, and then any of those co-located settings that are adjacent properties with day programs in residential or residential to residential, they have the March 2022 deadline. So we'll be sharing more information with the system in a webinar with DHHS next week on the 20th at 2:30, and we'll share resources, we'll review the state requirements and provider requirements, and just continue to move forward with technical assistance. You might ask, because there's a lot of data included there, what are some of the focus priorities that the system will have to take on? Of course, co-located properties will be an issue that there's no real easy solution because we can't just magically move properties around. But I think in the shorter term, really focusing the system on fostering independence, moving from a doing for kind of format to an assisting and supporting a person, and really looking at all those features of choice, of integration, those pieces that sometimes do have financial implications, but sometimes we have to look back and really apply a new philosophy and best practice to how we're providing services. The good news is that with our move as a system to measure outcomes through the basic assurances process, as providers have been real familiar with that over the last 10, 20 years. They've been telling us, we've been doing all this already. So they should be primed to really step up to the plate and implement that philosophy, because that will advise their systems of policies and practices so they'll be able to be compliant with the final rule requirements at a better degree.
Anybody have any questions? Thank you very much. Tom? Could you tell us what provider's contract increases?
Tab 6 in your booklet is the next item, and it's the two contract increases in need of your approval in regards to fiscal agency services that are provided by Charles Lee and Jasper DSN Board. The fiscal agency program is where the families of the employer, and then Charles Lee and Jasper operates as their payer agent to pay the caregivers for the service, and then Respite Coalition provides the training and background checks for the caregivers performing those services. The first contract increase is Respite statewide program for District 1 provided by Charles Lee. We've had several boards that have joined in the last fiscal year, and then we have more families that are opting for this service in our system as well. So requesting increase for the fiscal agent award for Respite service to Jasper, to Charles Lee Center, to increase by $317,000. Then the second contract increase is on the second page.
Do I need to vote on that separately? I think I do.
Okay.
I have a motion. Second? All those in favor?
Wait.
Okay.
Question.
Go. Sorry.
Maybe I missed this in your explanation.
We're just voting on the first one.
Right.
Okay.
Charles Lee.
Correct.
So the $317,000 for this year, when you call it increased activity, how much of that is going to respite care and how much of it is going to administering the program?
All of it is service.
All of it what?
All of it is service for families choosing that service.
Okay.
And the consumer getting the respite for family to go.
Okay.
To opportunity.
Okay.
So all of it's going to care.
100%.
100%.
Okay.
Any other questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Continue.
Okay. The second contract increase is for the fiscal agent services provided by Jasper for the in-home support service and community support waiver, and the respite statewide program for District 2. We have the same issue. We have more families that are choosing this service over the past months, and then several more boards in District 2 have come on board and joined the program in the last fiscal year. Requesting approval to increase the community support fiscal agent award for in-home supports by $800,000, and the respite statewide award for District 2 by $200,000. for the contracts with BHDD-OIDD.
Anyone have any questions? All those in favor? Oh, sorry. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Okay. Thank you. Can we continue with the 2018-2019 budget update, please?
Right?
Oh, I'm sorry, the easement. Sorry.
Tab 7 in your booklet is a easement request that we need your approval on for sewer source main utility easement at Witten Center. Lawrence County Water and Sewer Commission requested the South Carolina Disabilities Special Needs Board's grant a utility easement for the construction of a new sewer force main connecting system lift station on the southeast side of the campus to the lift station on the northeast side of the campus. Drawing of that sewer is in the second page of that tab. This work has been long overdue with the reduction in census over the past 20 years. The sewer system is too big for the amount of individuals now living on Witten Center campus. Witten Center Sewer Improvement Project is part of the proposed Witten Center land transfer that we came to y'all back in October, and y'all approved us to move forward with that transfer of land to the city of Clinton, and now taking over the infrastructure for the water, sewage, and drainage system on the campus up there. DDSN has reviewed this request, and we anticipate no detriment to the Witten Center residents or staff or the state property in granting this easement. Pending your approval today, DDSN will then have to submit it to the South Carolina Department Administration staff review and consideration at the State Fiscal Accountability Authority meetings in the future. We ask for your approval to move forward with this easement to better the conditions of Witten Center.
Do we have any questions? Do I have a motion?
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Second. Oh, I'm sorry, now a second. Well, I got 1 and 2.
1 and 2.
Sorry. Thank you. Tom, can you continue on with the budget update, please?
Tab 8. This is just the update of where we are in the budget cycle. In September, I approved the priorities for 2019, which starts in July of 18 for our needs in our system. And we had 9 priorities and then 1 capital infrastructure need, total of around $39 million for all 9 of those, and the $5 million for the capital infrastructure. The governor's executive budget was issued at the 1st of January, and only 1 of those 9 priorities was partially funded, and that was priority number 9, which is the post-acute PBS request. We have requested $500,000. The governor in his executive budget put $200,000 in his budget. That's on page 4 of that package. Interim Director Miley, as he stated earlier, testified before the Chairman Smith's Health Subcommittee of the Ways and Means on February 6th. Like he stated earlier, members of the committee provided good questions toward his presentation, and priorities 1 and 3 were favorably reviewed and received, but as Pat mentioned, there's limited amount of funds, a lot of requests in the pipe from all state agencies coming forth to them. So some of it's going to be limited funding to be able to manage some of those needs that we requested. Also priority 9, which was the post-acute care, got some recognition, and some individuals from the audience testified to the needs of that program being expanded in our state as well. We currently have about $3.1 million designated in our budget for the post-acute program in our budget. Ways and Means starts the debate on the 2019 budget next Monday, and they will debate it, hopefully finish up debate and come forward with a budget for 19 by the end of the week. And then it will go to the full House. The full House will vet it and vote it out, and then it goes to the Senate and Senate Finance. And I think Interim Director Malley has his subcommittee meeting with the State Senate Finance Health Committee on March the 7th. So we're presenting his presentation at that time and going over the goals and the priorities of our budget. After the Senate Finance debates it, then it goes forward to the full Senate. And once approved by the Senate, then the conference committee is established in the two houses and work out the differences. And then eventually it falls in the governor's lap for him to sign or to veto. All this to be completed by the second week of May. So we're in that busy time of the year, putting forth our needs, and hopefully the House will be a little more generous. They have a little bit more money to work with. The BEA report that came out, a little bit more financing funding available, so maybe we'll get a little bit more of our needs identified in their request, and then hopefully be successful a little more with the Senate as they get better estimates of where the revenue might be for 2019. So, any question on that?
Yeah, Tom, I know I'm probably a little bit late, but since we just had that report from Pat, is there any way we could increase the amount of psychiatric intervention and stabilization for individuals? It seems like that is we need it desperately.
That's part of it. It's 900,000 for the.
Well,
I don't think we're too late in the process.
Is it too late in the process to do it? Okay.
We'll be lucky to get.
You don't have to tell me. I understand that, but you know.
Sure. I know. I mean, their needs.
Their needs, and since it sounds like that's a really, if there's any way we can move that, that would be wonderful.
And I think some of that funding is just for getting the program up and going.
Yeah, I understand.
It's not really a statewide program, so even that money is not going to help us get it into all areas of the state. So, yeah, it's a need.
Okay. Anyone else have any other questions? Yes.
So the other thing, Tom, is, on those areas that we're requesting, but we're not likely to get the funds, we need to start making the plans of what we're going to do. I think particularly in the ICF area, trying to get those numbers up so that we don't run into the problem that we ran into earlier this year, where we made over a course of a couple of years, we made requests to get the funding in. It didn't come in, and ultimately it rose to the crisis level before we really confronted it. I think when we look at what our budget requests are and the stuff that we don't get, we need to then look and say, okay, how are we going to deal with this? Whether that's how are we dealing with the final rule issues, getting the equalization, we need to take the close the loop, to use my favorite phrase, on the budget processes. When we don't get the money we asked for in an area, we need to have a plan of how we're going to deal with the situations that we're trying to deal with more money. So we don't get to a crisis level like what we had before. And so what I'd like to see is at the end, when the budget comes in, we don't just get the report of what we got, but how are we dealing with what we didn't get? I think that's just as important for us going forward. So we don't have that sort of, and that's one way to avoid a crisis.
Right. We agree.
Okay. So I'd like to see that when we get the final numbers in to get some. Okay, how are we going to deal with it?
The other 7 that didn't get any.
Right, exactly.
Yes.
Okay.
Continue, sir.
Tab 9 is the finance reports for the end of January. It's for our 4 operating accounts that we use in maintaining our ongoing basis to our provider network and to the regional centers. It's broken down between the revenues that we have received to date and $479 million in revenue that we have received through January 31st, and then expenditures of $395.7 million expenditures through that same time period, leaving a balance of right at $83.5 million for the remaining 5 months. We'll still draw Medicaid as services are rendered in February through June, and draw down Medicaid reimbursement for those as we leverage our state funds to draw down the Medicaid funds. So the 83 million basically is already obligated to either our community providers in providing them contracts through their contractual relationship with us for services they deliver, and for our regional centers, and they're providing care at the campuses of our 5 regional centers. So that's the cash analysis of where we stand. And the next page is the budget versus actual report off the state accounting system. Shows what we started with through the Appropriations Act that's General Assembly and the Governor provided for the department as of July 1, showing the $747.8 million appropriations authority that we had. We received another $7.5 million through the additional money that we received after July 1 for increases related to retirement and health insurance that was not in the original budget that was passed out in September, and the federal grant that we got for the FEMA is in that $7.5 million additional authority that we've received since July. So our new budget, our current budget authority for the General Assembly is $755 million. And the next column shows the expenditures through January, the same number we said a while ago, $395.7 million expenditures through January. The next page is just our quarterly review of our regional center operations, and showing the overall dollars of $66.4 million budgeted for personnel services and operating expenditures at the regional centers. We're right on target at 50% mark through December. And fringe benefits aren't listed here because they're in another separate program per the Appropriations Act. So the management at the regional centers are operating their campuses within the means and providing quality care for those consumers within the dollars they have for them to operate under through the December 31st time frame.
Okay.
Those are our 3 reports.
All right. Anybody have any questions? You want to continue with the mid-year spending plan?
Tab 10, just an update on where we are with the spending plan that y'all approved back in September. Basically, the spending plan establishes fiscal initiatives for the year based on new priorities or new money that the department has received during the budget cycle from the previous budget cycle process. We had really no new money provided from the General Assembly for the 18 fiscal year other than the 89-cent pay raise that we received for direct care workers, and that's listed here. We'll discuss that in a second. There was no other money that we received for any new initiatives in our system. Top half of that report just shows our levels of spending for our base needs, which are our community contracts, which y'all approved back in the beginning of the year, $535 million. We're committed or expended that money through the mid-year point. $106 million of dollars that were budgeted for the regional centers and program operations. We spent $61 million through December. We got $54 million to spend toward the second half of the year. Administrative cost here at central office, $8.9 million. We spent $4.3 million through December, another $4.6 million, $4.7 million remaining in that budget line. And below that are the several initiatives that we had. The first one being the 89-cent pay raise. All that money has been provided out to our providers and to the regional center staff performing those duties as direct care workers in our system. $25 million done through amendment. I think it was done. It was already been provided. And then the capital needs, we had some money set aside, $3.2 million for needs of maintenance and upgrade upgrades and capacity increases for our provider network. These are not state-owned facilities or provider-owned facilities that we help them with needs within their residential and day programs. We spent almost $2 million through December, and then their debt service fund for state-owned facilities, mainly our regional campuses, and some 60 facilities out in the community that are state-owned facilities. We had a budget of expenditures of about $2.1 million. We spent right at $1.8 million through December. So a lot of activity going on in that array of getting some of those projects done through our authority we have. So that's it.
Anybody have any questions? Vicki?
Tom, why is the administrative budget about $1 million more than it was last year?
Some of that is pay raises, and some of it was.
How much were the pay raises?
It would be a lot of pay raises.
Man. Ooh.
Well, that was the issue. I have to think back through it now. It's been a while since I thought about that.
It's also $1 million more than was approved in the General Assembly.
Some of it, we have some cushion in there for, computers and things like that.
Isn't it Ben's group has a big part of that? We stood up Ben's
Yes,
group?
that was part of the increase. We stood up Ben's group. And then we have
Ben's
What's
group?
Ben's group?
Waiver
waiver administration.
The Medicaid waiver division that was created, and we didn't know about that, yeah.
Yeah.
So what is the cost of that division, do you know?
Probably $400,000 or $500,000.
And
What did they do?
They assure compliance with Medicaid requirements for waivers as approved by DHHS. It's a function of quality control within the system.
Okay. So we just added on that division.
I know Dr. Buscemi had talked about the function. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but Dr. Buscemi did talk about that function.
I don't think we voted on adding a division.
No, I don't think you did.
And spend another $500,000 on it. On capital improvements, Tom, you've got $2 million, and you said we helped a lot of providers with that. Could you be a little more specific about that $2 million?
Yeah, it's 5 or 6 houses that we've, providers have purchased, and that's probably $500,000 or $600,000 of that money. Y'all approved a roofing project for Burton Center, I don't know, back
300,000.
September or October or something, 700,000, that's part of it. There's, you approved some money for Bamberg. They're finishing up their day program, like 400,000 for that program to get that, day program to its finalization and get it online. And there might have been, Charles Lee, there's some money for Charles Lee for a day program they're operating up in Chelsea, what's the name of that town?
Chesney?
Chesney.
That, we committed to. I think it's about the 2 million, I think, between those. 500,000 for residential, 700 for.
Because, I mean, none of, these weren't on the capital improvements that we voted on in that list you gave us, so these just kind of happened throughout the year. So if we could get a list of that breakdown of that 2 million, that would be good. Because the financial report shows, it doesn't show that we've spent 2 million. The financial report shows that we spent 264,000 in capital outlays. The one you gave us in that last tab.
And Tom, these salaries you're talking about, is not for direct care workers, is it?
That's not the same. I think we've had a discussion before. I think that's just, equipment type capital outlays. That's like vehicles and things like that that are being purchased or other equipment type stuff. It's not capital. It's not capital for it, it's construction.
And I hate to harp, but of course I will, but the, on the financial reports, it would be good if we got a little bit more information that meant something, because, if we have capital over here of 2 million and we got capital over here of 200,000 and we don't have any idea what that is. So, I mean, at some point, I'll probably be long gone, but at some point we need to really look at these financial reports and figure out how we can get a report that tells us this is what we approved, this is what we actually spent, this is the difference, P&L budget versus actual thing. That's all.
Okay.
Keep it.
I think, Pat's trying to work on some.
I got something for you.
Exposure of that.
Exposure.
Hopefully next month.
And these salary increase, were they just internal or had nothing to do with direct care workers? You just said you had salary increases.
Yeah, I was thinking of, I had to explain the $1 million. I don't have the facts in front of me right now. I know probably part of it was the waiver administration.
Yeah, okay.
Bring up.
I was just wondering, it's not direct care workers, it was internal, okay.
I know there's 300,000 or 400,000 in there for potential buying computers. We have to continually have a fleet management of our computers, because every 5 years, if you don't,
I understand.
So there's some money in there for potentially buying some computers. We have some cash as we get close to the end of the year. So that's part of the $1 million, of that 300,000 or 400,000 we have in there for possible computer purchases.
So you're going to provide us a breakdown of that increase?
Yes, sir, we can.
Okay, that'd be great.
Okay.
Thank you. Y'all keep me straight. Update on the CPIP projects.
Yes, ma'am. Tab 11, update on the comprehensive and permanent improvement plan, which is CPIP. We've listed here the four most recent capital plans for fiscal 15, 16, 17, and 18. Since this report is dated November, we've since then have December that's come in. So another 600,000 of either commitments or expenditures have come through on some of these accounts in that time frame over the last month or so. Out of those projects, we got $9.5 million authority approved and authorized by y'all. We've only have through this year 17, we don't have any of the 18s that y'all approved back in April or May of 17 approved yet through the process downtown. So that 2.2 million, we don't have authority to start spending money on those. So if you take those out, we got about 7.2 million available to spend, and we're spending, you can see we spent various projects where we are in some of those projects related to commitments and projects that we have. Some of these are deferred maintenance or preventive maintenance accounts that are available when we do have emergency or crisis, where we have an air conditioning system fails or a fire alarm system fails. We can go right in there with the money already being authority there. We can go in there and start procuring the project and get it done. So that's where we stand currently with the most recent projects that have been approved for y'all the last several years. Second page is the generators. Then with the 3 generators projects that have been approved, only 2 of them have been fully vetted downtown and been approved at the budget authority. We've got activities on those going forward. There's 3 major priorities that generator needs that have been identified on our regional campuses. One at Coastal Hillside 520, a kitchen generator at Salibi, and then Witten 205. 205 project has been finished, and then the Hillside and Salibi projects are in construction with the generator needs in our system, state and nationally, because of the hurricane generator kind of in a backorder state right now. So we're hoping these 2 generators that we got for Hillside and Salibi are in moving toward our areas. They've been in order for several months, and so hopefully any day now we'll be getting them, and then the contractor will be coming in and installing them, get those facilities up and going. There are also some projects have been identified on a couple of the campuses to provide general capacity, some non-residential facilities. Some of this money will be used for that, but we haven't got to them yet because they're not residential facilities. And there's one project that's been identified for 2 living units, dormitories, where we currently have 1 generator providing capacity to 2 houses. And what we want to do is take them off the same generator, put 1 generator on both houses. So that's in the works as well.